They say prisons are built to contain crime, to enforce law, to hold power behind walls. But what if those walls themselves become battlefields? Imagine midnight. The moon a thin sliver in the sky. A yard of concrete and iron. In one wing, men sleeping, or trying to. In another, whispers passing from cell to cell. Rumors of betrayal. A phone call, intercepted or mistaken, that echoes longer than it should. At 0:05, a mattress is ignited, flames licking upward, smoke beginning to curl into the corridors. No alarm yet, or if there is, it's not heard. Because by then, someone has unlocked a gate. Or maybe the lock is already broken. Maybe guards look the other way. Minutes later, chaos erupts. Factions rise from their bunks. Faces illuminated by firelight. Weapons drawn, makeshift knives, bats, perhaps steel bars. Shouts echo through the corridors, names screamed in rage, in fear. Screams of prisoners, commands from inside cell blocks, footsteps pounding. Outside, gates rattle. Guards awaken. Doors slam. A tower light flickers. The watchtower is dark in one sector. Shadows move like figures, or maybe they are just shadows. By then, the fire has spread, to a storage room, to a yard shed, to cell windows. Smoke fills halls where people run blindly. Some fall. Some fight. Some claw at doors hoping they will open. Others are trapped. And then, horror, bodies. The first ones. The second wave. Whoever survives is running out of choices. Authorities will later say gunfire was not involved, only knives, clubs, and brutality with hands that once washed, now covered in blood. But in the moment, the sound of metal on metal, of anguished cries, makes it seem like war. And when dawn finally breaks, if it does, the compound will be transformed. The dead will number in the dozens. But you will feel, watching, as if the very fabric of control had unraveled hours before. This is not just a riot. This is a breakdown. A chain reaction of power, fear, and betrayal. Tonight, we go inside those walls. We will try to uncover the minute by minute, the decision by decision, that turned concrete wings into funeral halls. Stay with me, because what you think you know as fact may not be what happened. The true story lies in the moments no one saw, words no one spoke, and alarms that never rang in time. In just a moment, we move beyond rumors, beyond the headlines. We open the prison gates of truth.
You are watching True Crime Cartel Originals. Before we dive into today's story, I've got one small favor to ask. If you love deep, real stories like this, tap the like button, hit subscribe, and drop a comment below telling us which city you're watching from. It helps more than you know, and it allows us to keep bringing you stories no one else dares to tell. Now, let's get into the story.
They say power is invisible in prisons until someone breaks its surface. To understand what was about to break, we must first map the place, stone by stone, rusted lock by rusted lock. The prison stands in a remote region, concrete walls stained with decades of weather, barbed wire loops doubled over the top of guard towers. Built for roughly 600 inmates, it long ago exceeded that number. Cells designed for 2 now house 4, sometimes 5. Sleep comes in shifts, someone always awake, always watching. Corruption, like water seeped through cracks. Guards whose salaries are weeks late. Administrators who overlook small bribes for the promise of quiet. Cameras that go down and remain down. Doors that don't lock. Keys unaccounted for. Rumors that certain cells are off the record, where what happens stays unreported. Within these walls coexist several cartel offshoots, each with their iron code. Outside, you might know them by name: La Sierra, Los Halcones, El Cartel Verde. Inside, they split into factions: the Serranos, the Cuervos, the Lobos, each following different lieutenants. The Serranos control supply lines, drugs, phones, even weapons. The Cuervos are enforcers, protecting territory, collecting debts, enforcing silence. The Lobos are newer, ambitious, pushing into Serrano territory. Between them runs an older rivalry, respect earned on the streets, blood spilled in betrayals. Tension is alive in corridors, a glance, a whispered insult, a delivered package to the wrong block. No grand battle yet, but the fault lines exist. And with overcrowding, every inch of space becomes a source of conflict: bunk assignments, control of windows, access to the yard. Daily life in the compound is a study in contradictions. Some mornings, there is routine, the clank of metal trays, guards at their stations, the ringing of bells for movement. Lunch. Yard time. Counting heads. But beneath the routine there are currents of illicit trade. Drugs come in, smuggled in meals, in laundry, in secrets. Phones, contraband, but priceless, used at night under blankets, whispered into silence. Guards sometimes look the other way. Sometimes the bribe is wine, or caged cell phones, or the promise of protection. Sometimes fear or complicity, sometimes both. The infirmary is overrun, medical aid is rationed. Some men cough in hallways, others lie in bunks for days. A guard will walk past and see only the sleeping, dismissing moans as part of the background noise. Over time, small fights spring up. In Block C, a Serrano man accuses a Lobo of stealing a phone battery. Blood is wiped, both sides swear revenge. In Block A, a missing package leads to threats in the yard, words shouted over fences. There are warnings, letters from relatives, legal aid workers complain. Intelligence gathered by outside NGOs says cells are overpopulated, guard-to-inmate ratio dangerously low, doors broken, lights failing. Some reports are filed. Some are ignored. Inside, one inmate remembers a night with shouting that seemed louder than usual. A guard heard it too, but was told not to report it. Another remembers steps in corridors when no one should have been walking. Footsteps that, in retrospect, meant more than he knew. And yet, daily life forces adaptation. Men learn which blocks are safer, which voices to avoid, which guards can be trusted, or bribed, which ones are dangerous. Alliances in the yard: you watch my back, I watch yours. You get me a battery, I give you food. Visits from families are small island moments. A mother arrives clutching a photograph. A child drops a gift. Guards open the gate, for 15 minutes, grief becomes hope. Then closes. With the gates locked again, normality returns, but the island disappears. There are days when wardens inspect the facility, things repaired, promises made. Flashlights fixed. Doors oiled. But under the polish, the rot remains. A lock that clicks still may not hold. A guard's oath may be broken by fear or by order from above. Foreshadowing shadows are everywhere. A guard's memo says, "We are understaffed, cannot guarantee full patrols." Another memo, "Suspicious movements, contraband volume increased." A report of weapons found in kitchen supplies. A rumor that a high-ranking leader in one faction is planning something big. These warnings are like smoke before the fire. The kind you smell, but tell yourself it will pass. Then the smoke thickens. The alarms begin to fail. The locks begin to loosen. One day, just one day before the terror, two inmates fight with knives in the yard over stolen food. They are separated. No serious injuries. But afterward, both factions sharpen blades in cells. One group drills a hole in cell wall to pass messages, another group tests the guard rotation, noticing when guards are distracted. In later interviews, survivors will talk about how they'd stopped trusting silence. How they noticed that when things went wrong, the people in charge always deferred. No one invited extra guards. No one changed shift schedules. And when family members asked questions, they were told paperwork takes time. Meanwhile, the factions deepen their alliance networks, Serranos buying extra food packs, Lobos paying guards, Cuervos protecting corridors. Each group preparing, each gathering resources. Not openly at first, but in the quiet hours, after lights are out, during roll calls when oversight is minimal. By the end of this build-up phase, something has changed. The air tastes different. The corridors feel thinner. The gates seem quieter. The guard towers, those still staffed, are stretched taut. No guard can see everything. No camera covers every angle. And in that gap, in the unobserved moments, the spark is ready. Follow me as we trace the spark itself, what triggered the ignition, and how that small moment would cascade into the deadliest night these walls had ever known. It begins with a single act that seems small, but in places like this, small acts are never small for long. A few days before midnight, a trusted courier arrives at the Serrano barracks, clutching a package bound in brown paper. Inside, a moderate debt owed to a Cuervo lieutenant. The courier is supposed to deliver it, take apologies, calm tempers. But he is intercepted in the hallway, accused of lying, of delaying payment. Words escalated faster than bodies. The Serrano enforcer denies the accusation. A shove. Then a palm strike. A blow. In the cell block, metal beds creak. The courier, bruised, returns to his bunk. Whispers run down corridors, he hit him. They insulted the Cuervos. They will pay for this. That insult, like acid, eats at pride. Overnight, the corridors vibrate with rumor. Someone in Block B says the Serranos are stockpiling blades and shivs in their mattresses. Another says they bribed a guard to smuggle in metal rods hidden inside food trays. The Cuervos, not to be outdone, are said to have mapped guard shift changes. At 2 o'clock, someone claims to have seen crates beneath blankets in Serrano's block being passed cell to cell. By twilight the next day, there is a strange stillness. The Serranos gather in small knots. Their voices low, gestures clipped. The Cuervos patrol the mess hall more often, loitering near exits. The Lobos watch both, shifting allegiances quietly. One evening, a Serrano leader orders the collection of certain herbs, used to mask the smell of metal, and vinegar, to clean improvised blades. These items are registered, but their quantity is small enough to be plausible, and paperwork is lax. They are hidden beneath storage shelves. Under mattresses. Between ceiling tiles. Simultaneously, in Cuervo territory, a lieutenant sends word, watch the water supply corridor. They might try to flood gates. Someone else echoes, they'll attack the west tower, the guard there is new. These are whispers in the night, easy to dismiss, hard to forget. Tension runs thin, prisoners stop speaking when guards pass. Eyes avoid each other across yards. Small mutters in showers. In Block D, a nurse hears screams in the night, someone collapses, bleeding. No one claims knowledge, the wounds are patched, not explained. Late at night, someone slips out of his cell to patch locks scheduled for maintenance, screws loose, a latch misaligned. He tightens it quietly, hoping to gain a tiny advantage later. Meanwhile, Serrano's leader calls together key lieutenants. He speaks of betrayals, they took my share of supply. They flaunted it. A Cuervo spy overhears. Word reaches the Cuervo captain, gather your men. Be ready. Preparations proceed in silence, blades sharpened, pipes reinforced, makeshift shields fashionable from trays. Some inmates use smuggled plastic plates as masks. Some fill bottles with bleach or cleaning chemicals. All of it done in secret, under the noses of guards who sometimes glance away. Guard schedules become erratic. Serrano operatives note which guard towers have weak coverage. Cuervos study the guard rotation logs if they can obtain them, memorizing when halls are less watched. One guard is ill, his shift is covered by another who is unfamiliar with Block D's corridors. An anonymous memo circulates among mid-level staff, be alert. Rumors of large-scale disturbance. The warden's office marks it as non-actionable. The next morning, the courtyard is full. Prisoners in the yard look at each other differently. Some stand alone. Some walk in tight pairs. The Serrano banner, tattooed boar heads, dark ink, glimmers in the morning sun. The Cuervo hawks, feather logos carved into cell walls, look newer, sharper. In the kitchen, knives slid quietly under tables. In the workshop, metal shards hidden among discarded scrap. In the supply closet, bleach mixed with cleaning supplies, bottles filled partially with water in case someone tries to extinguish fire or use it as a weapon. Then one afternoon, a Cuervo lieutenant is found dead near his cell. Officially, cause is listed unknown, as internal investigations begin. Serrano's whisper revenge. Cuervo's whisper set up. The stakes now become visible, death is in the air. That night, the horizon is simmering. Men in cell blocks lie awake, listening for footsteps, for doors that shouldn't open. The smell of metal. The weight of secrets. And so, on that night, neither side acts overtly. There is no shout that cracks the calm, no gun until later. But the stage is set. The players know their positions. Every hidden blade, every whispered threat, every compromised guard becomes a move in a silent chess game. What comes next is inevitable. Let's trace the ignition moment itself, the minute when silence snapped, when fear became action, when all preparation turned into catastrophe. It begins at midnight. At first, it is only one scream, high-pitched, muffled, and carried through the concrete corridors. Prisoners jolt awake, looking at each other in confusion. Then, more shouts. A clanging sound. A door somewhere slams shut, or open, no one knows for sure. Suddenly, locks rattle. Some snap open, some refuse to hold. Doors swing violently. Inmates pour out, some carrying shivs, others with nothing but fists. The air fills with panic, confusion, fury. A mattress is hurled into the corridor and set ablaze, flames crawling across its surface, smoke curling upward into darkness. From another block comes the unmistakable metallic clang of pipes striking against gates. The Cuervos are surging, weapons raised, faces grim with rage. Serranos rush to meet them, knives glinting in the dim light. The Lobos scatter at first, but soon some join in, their allegiances shifting with survival. The guards try to intervene. At first, a handful rush into the corridor shouting orders. But they are overwhelmed almost instantly. Rocks, bottles, and fists rain down. Radios are smashed, keys torn from belts, helmets ripped away. The balance of power shifts in minutes, the inmates are no longer contained. Chaos ripples outward. In Block C, someone sets fire to blankets dipped in bleach. They throw them against doors, sparks erupt, and smoke fills the air. Men inside cells cough violently, banging against doors, screaming for release. But the locks jammed earlier now trap them inside. Their fists pound metal until their hands bleed. Gunfire cracks in the distance. At first, a single shot, then a burst. No one knows if it's guards or inmates. The sound bounces off walls, magnified, terrifying. Men duck, some run blindly, some charge toward the noise. A body slams to the ground, unmoving. The yard is no safer. Flames lick across sheds, weapons pulled from hidden caches. A group of Serranos charges across open ground wielding machetes, their silhouettes illuminated by burning debris. Cuervos answer with iron bars and sharpened rods. Blood splashes against the concrete. Screams rise into the night sky. For those trapped, terror multiplies. A man shoves his arm through bars until skin tears, trying to reach a set of discarded keys. Another smashes his head against a wall until it splits, screaming for the smoke to end. Flames climb higher, blackening ceilings, melting plastic, filling lungs with poison. The guards retreat. Some barricade themselves in the administrative wing. Others flee the towers, abandoning their posts. The prison is now in the hands of the inmates. Outside, families gather at the gates, hearing gunshots and screams. They bang against the fences, crying, begging for news. But no word comes. By 2 a.m., the compound is unrecognizable. Fires rage in multiple wings. Bodies litter corridors. Some prisoners still fight, others collapse from smoke or wounds. A handful crawl through vents, cutting themselves on jagged steel, desperate to escape. The air tastes of ash and blood. No one knows who will survive until dawn. This is no longer a prison riot. This is a battlefield sealed inside concrete walls. And every man inside, prisoner, guard, leader, pawn, must now answer the same question: who makes it out alive, and who doesn't? Every riot has its turning point. For some, it is the moment the flames leap higher than the walls. For others, it is the sound of a blade against flesh. But for the men who lived through this night, the turning point was personal, marked in seconds that scarred them forever. In Block D, a Serrano foot soldier named El Mano is dragged into the corridor. He had been accused of betraying his faction by smuggling a phone to the Cuervos. Surrounded by masked inmates, he pleads for mercy. But the Cuervo lieutenant steps forward, raises a blade, and delivers swift retribution. The corridor erupts in cheers and screams, blending into one unholy sound. Across the yard, the Cuervos capture a Lobo enforcer. They pin him against a burning wall, questioning him about hidden weapons. His silence earns no mercy. He is executed on the spot, body left sprawled in the yard, flames licking the concrete around him. Leaders begin giving orders. The Serrano captain, blood on his shirt, yells commands: "Block C is ours. Burn the rest." His men rush forward with torches, setting beds and curtains ablaze, creating barriers of fire to trap their enemies. The Cuervo leader counters, directing his forces toward the administrative wing, shouting for prisoners to push tables against the gates to cut off reinforcements. For guards still inside, survival is its own war. Some barricade themselves in control rooms, holding rifles and radios, praying for backup that will not come. Others abandon posts, slipping out through service tunnels. And a few, perhaps too few, pick sides, handing keys or weapons to cartel leaders in exchange for promises of protection once the flames die down. Testimonies later reveal horrors that defy imagination. Prisoners describe watching comrades suffocated in burning cells, trapped behind doors that no one unlocked. Others recall seeing men hung from stair rails, executed as warnings. One said, "It wasn't just killing. It was theater. They wanted us to see." By 3 a.m., the killings spiral. Blood pools in hallways, footsteps smear red trails along the floors. The weak are targeted first, the isolated, the young, the sick. Some men are dragged from infirmaries, their screams echoing as medicines spill across the floor. The stronger ones join the fight, armed with whatever they can salvage. In one block, two rival lieutenants face off in a final confrontation. Serrano and Cuervo, both scarred, both armed with machetes. The clash is brutal, echoing like thunder in the confined space. Witnesses say the fight lasted minutes that felt like hours, ending only when one collapsed, hacked beyond recognition. The survivor raised his blade, roaring triumph into the choking smoke. Guards outside hear the carnage but remain paralyzed. Gunshots ring sporadically, but no coordinated response comes. Families at the gates weep as ambulances arrive empty-handed, barred from entry by the chaos. Inside, the screams continue, louder, more desperate, then suddenly silenced. By dawn, hundreds are dead. Bodies lie stacked in corridors, burned in corners, or hidden in the shadows of collapsed bunks. The smell of blood and smoke is thick enough to choke. Survivors wander aimlessly, dazed, ash coating their faces. The riot is not over, but the night has broken them. This was not just violence. This was not just revenge. It was annihilation, a night where control collapsed, where survival became a coin toss, and where hundreds were erased in hours that felt like centuries. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the black smoke rising from the prison. The fires still smolder, casting an orange haze across the yard. Silence follows, not the peaceful kind, but the dreadful stillness that comes only after screams have burned themselves out. Hundreds lie lifeless, sprawled in corridors, piled in charred bunks, or hidden beneath collapsed rubble. Emergency sirens echo in the distance, but they take hours to arrive. Security forces linger outside the walls, fearing an ambush. No one dares to be the first through the gates. Paramedics wait helplessly behind police barricades, clutching their stretchers, eyes wide with fear. The prison becomes a tomb where the dead remain uncounted, and the wounded bleed into silence. Outside the gates, families have been there all night, mothers, fathers, wives, children. They press against the chain-link fence, sobbing, shouting names, begging guards for answers. Some collapse on the dirt road, clutching photos of loved ones. Others scream accusations, their voices breaking against the steel and concrete that refuses to answer back. As the hours drag on, journalists begin to arrive. Cameras roll, capturing the smoke, the crying families, the military trucks stationed in tense silence. The world awakens to headlines that will echo across every continent: massacre inside prison. The story spreads like fire, questions outpacing answers, rumors swirling faster than facts. Inside, the first responders finally step through. What they find is beyond anything they imagined. Hallways drenched in blood, walls blackened with soot, corpses stacked like broken statues. Some bodies are burned beyond recognition, others hacked and left in grotesque displays of power. Survivors wander aimlessly, their faces pale, eyes hollow, too shocked to speak. The delay proves deadly. Many who might have survived with quick medical care are found dead hours later, victims not only of machetes and flames, but of abandonment. The unspoken truth is clear: the authorities chose fear over duty. They left men to die. Back outside, the grief intensifies. Word spreads that hundreds are dead, but no official numbers are given. Families begin chanting, demanding lists, demanding names, demanding justice. Riot police push them back, their shields gleaming in the morning sun, while the sound of crying children mixes with the sharp click of news photographers' cameras. International outrage erupts within hours. Newspapers across the globe plaster images of smoke and weeping families across their front pages. Politicians issue statements of condemnation. Human rights groups call it a massacre, a failure of governance, a symbol of a state losing control to the cartels it cannot contain. But for the families still waiting, outrage means little. They want one thing: to know if their loved one is alive. They shout at soldiers for names, some even offering bribes. Others pray aloud, clutching rosaries or whispering promises to God. Every hour without news becomes a deeper wound, a torture that feels unending. As the sun climbs higher, the prison yard becomes a morgue. Sheets are draped over bodies, one after another. Trucks arrive, not for rescue, but for collection. The final count will take days, maybe weeks, but already it is clear: this is one of the deadliest prison riots in history. A nightmare too vast for words, too heavy for silence. This was the dawn after hell, the morning when the world looked into those prison walls and saw not order, not justice, not security, but the collapse of humanity itself. When the fires finally die down, and the screams fade into silence, the prison no longer feels like a place of confinement. It feels like a graveyard. Smoke lingers in the dawn air, thick and choking, clinging to the skin of those who step inside. The rising sun cuts through the haze, illuminating shadows of bodies, scattered across courtyards, slumped in corridors, piled in corners where they tried, and failed, to escape. The silence is deceptive. It isn't peace. It's the aftermath of horror, the kind of silence where every step crunches against debris, where every echo reminds survivors of what they lost. Men who just hours before screamed for their lives now lie still, their faces twisted in terror, frozen at the moment of their deaths. Authorities arrive, but they do not rush in. The first units, police, paramedics, even soldiers, park outside the walls. They wait. Hours pass. Radios crackle, but no one gives the order to move. The excuse whispered among them is fear, fear of walking into a trap, fear that armed prisoners still wait inside to ambush whoever enters first. While they hesitate, men bleed out inside, their lives measured not in hours, but in minutes. Beyond the gates, families wait. They've been there all night, clinging to rumors, hoping to see their sons, brothers, or fathers emerge alive. Mothers press photographs against the fence, screaming names into the void. Children sit barefoot in the dirt, their eyes red from crying. Every few minutes, a desperate voice rises above the others: tell us something. Tell us if they're alive. But no answers come. Inside, the stench is unbearable. Smoke. Blood. Burned flesh. The responders who finally dare to step through the gates cover their mouths with rags, but nothing blocks out the smell. Their boots slip in pools of blood as they make their way through blackened hallways. They step past scorched doors still locked from the outside, inside of which men were burned alive. They find survivors too, men staggering half-naked, their skin blistered, their eyes wide and vacant. Some are silent, in shock, staring at nothing. Others sob uncontrollably, whispering prayers. A few cling to guards' uniforms, begging for water, begging to be taken out. Their voices echo in the hollow corridors like ghosts refusing to leave. Outside, the chaos grows. Word spreads fast that hundreds may be dead, but no official confirmation is given. Families scream at the soldiers, "How many? Who is alive?" Riot police form a wall between the gates and the crowd. Tension simmers dangerously, grief threatening to explode into violence. A mother faints, clutching her son's photo. Another throws herself at the boots of an officer, begging for the list of names. By mid-morning, journalists swarm the scene. Cameras capture every anguished scream, every lifeless stretcher carried out, every plume of smoke rising from the prison. The images spread instantly, across local stations, then international broadcasts. Headlines scream massacre. The world, for the first time, glimpses the scale of the nightmare. As officials finally begin removing the bodies, the scale becomes undeniable. Trucks arrive, not to bring food or medicine, but to collect the dead. Black plastic bags line the prison yard like a macabre assembly line. Some are marked with numbers, most remain nameless. The sheer weight of loss stuns even the hardened soldiers. Across the globe, the images ignite outrage. Human rights groups condemn the state for allowing the bloodshed. Politicians issue hollow statements of concern. International media brands it one of the worst prison massacres in history. But for the families still pressed against the gates, none of that matters. Their grief isn't global. It's personal. Every headline, every number, is a face. A son. A father. A brother. This was not just a riot. This was a message. A warning carved in blood and fire. And yet, even in the ashes of dawn, the truth was only beginning to surface. As dawn fades into morning, government officials hold a press conference. They appear composed, somber. Their talking points are carefully rehearsed, order restored, loss regretted, investigations underway. The numbers they announce are restrained, far fewer than what survivor accounts suggest. They claim perhaps around 100 fatalities, dozens injured, words chosen to soothe. But outside, in the burned corridors, and in whispered conversations among families, the count is already far higher. People who saw bodies say they numbered far more than officials are willing to admit. The tension between what is said and what is seen becomes the first crack in the official story. Meanwhile, internal documents leak. A guard log from before the riot shows repeated reports of weapons found in cells, blades, metal rods, but with notes saying confiscated, under control, then no follow-up. Transfer orders show certain faction leaders moved into adjacent blocks just days before the riot. Some of these blocks later became hotspots of violence. Investigators find that security camera footage from critical corridors was either blank, corrupted, or missing. Official explanation: power failure, fire damage. Survivors say literally no cameras recorded the most violent bursts, the stairwell where many died, the cell block locked from outside, the hall where gunfire cracked. Survivor testimonies emerge. One man describes seeing guards opening doors for certain inmates. "We thought they were rescue teams, but they let in men carrying weapons." Another says he saw an armed figure wearing guard gear walking past burning cells, returning with bloodied hands. These accounts directly contradict the official narrative that guards were overwhelmed and besieged. Instead, survivors claim some guards colluded either directly or by failing to act. Some locked themselves away, others never came at all. In Parliament, questions are asked. Opposition legislators demand full disclosure of the fatality list. Requests for data, names of the dead, the wounded, transfers, guard logs. But many requests are met with delays. Documents are redacted. Some files lost. Others classified on grounds of security concerns. A legal aid organization obtains partial lists from hospitals. Their death registers exceed by dozens the number provided by the prison administration. Mismatches in timestamps, body conditions, and cause of death suggest misreporting or suppression. Corruption begins to emerge. It is revealed that a high-ranking prison official had financial ties with contractors supplying food and uniforms, contractors who also held informal deals with certain inmate factions. Some prison wardens had received gifts from cartel members, phone credits, jewelry, assurances of silence in return for turning a blind eye. Journalists tracking these ties find that the same contractor had bid for guard supply contracts shortly after the riot and won them despite poor performance in other facilities. Families allege that petitions to inspect that contractor's records were denied. Meanwhile, the official forensic report is published. It states that the majority of deaths were due to smoke inhalation, stampede, internal violence. Very few mentions of high-velocity injuries or evidence of systematic execution. Survivor in-death interviews refute that. One survivor's burns do not match the timeline of the stampedes claimed. Another's wounds are consistent with sharp steel weapons, not smoke or blunt force. Some report bodies with multiple stab wounds. Others claim gunshot holes in doors. The forensics report is challenged by independent doctors and NGOs. They request access to autopsy photos. They are granted limited access. Some families see photos. They show injuries more severe, more varied, more gruesome than the official summary allows. Public pressure mounts. Protests erupt. Candlelight vigils. Names chanted. A social media campaign #TheyWere400, or similar, trends. People demand that the state open all documents, identify officials who failed, investigate whether anyone was paid off. In response, government spokespeople push back. They claim miscounted reports. They question the credibility of survivors. They allege rumors. They promise full inquiries, but with caveats: evidence must be preserved, investigations ongoing, nothing to hide. On television, official statements are broadcast. The narrative: unfortunate tragedy, rogue inmates, overwhelmed guards. The narrative emphasizes that the prison system had warned of overcrowding and underfunding, that the state has initiated disciplinary actions. But what is not said: which guards are culpable, where the surveillance footage is, why body counts do not match, how many names are missing. Meanwhile, interviews with survivors air on local radio. One man's voice trembles: "They said I died. I left that block and they counted someone else in my bed." Another woman says she saw someone killed whose name doesn't appear on any list. Questions remain unanswered. Who ordered transfers before the riot? Who disabled certain cameras? Why were walls unlocked when they shouldn't have been? How many guards fled versus how many aided? Why did medical aid arrive so late? Why were family names missing in official lists? Some of those questions are whispered in private corridors of power. Others are shouted in public squares. But few answers come. Documents remain sealed or redacted. Some investigations are shelved. Some witnesses disappear or retract. Then late in the day, a whistleblower surfaces, a low-level guard who claims he overheard orders that night to hold position until the fires burned out, to not assist rivals. He says some guards were told to avoid intervention in certain blocks. He provides recordings, shaky voice, fear in speech, but proves some of the most damning pieces of the puzzle. This revelation shatters much of the official story. It forces new investigations. It forces the question, not just what happened, but who enabled it, who ordered an action, and who benefited from silence. This is the moment when narrative becomes contested. The moment when silence is not enough. And the truth, buried under smoke and half-statements, demands to be uncovered. The massacre was not the end. In many ways, it was the beginning of something darker. Inside the prison system, the riot redrew the map of power. Entire factions were wiped out in a single night, their leaders executed or burned alive. Those who survived did not forget, they carried their scars as badges, rallying points for revenge. For the cartels outside, the bloodbath became more than a headline. It was a signal. One organization emerged stronger, its enemies weakened beyond repair. In boardrooms and back alleys, alliances shifted. Old enemies shook hands out of necessity, former brothers turned against each other. The prison was supposed to contain violence, instead, it became a detonator that set off new wars across entire regions. Families of the dead bore the deepest wounds. Widows left without husbands. Children without fathers. Mothers who spent their lives visiting prisons now left with graves instead. For them, the riot did not end with a number on a government report. It became a daily absence, an empty chair at the table, a photograph on the wall, a name whispered during prayers. Entire communities were destabilized. Young men who lost their fathers drifted toward gangs themselves, seeking revenge, seeking belonging. Neighborhoods already fragile from poverty became recruitment grounds overnight. Instead of weakening cartel power, the massacre gave them martyrs, stories to fuel loyalty, blood debts to be paid. Inside the prison system, the lesson was clear: brutality worked. Inmates learned that massacres could reset the balance of power faster than negotiations ever could. Guards learned that silence, corruption, and looking the other way carried fewer consequences than confronting cartel influence. The riot was not a deterrent. It was a blueprint. The government promised reform. Commissions were announced, task forces created, statements made. But little changed. Overcrowding worsened. Bribes continued to flow. Contraband slipped in easier than medicine. The very same conditions that sparked the massacre were left untouched. The walls still held men, but not justice. Internationally, the riot became a warning case study. Experts wrote reports, citing it as proof of systemic rot. Human rights organizations demanded accountability. But inside the country, where cartels had more influence than lawmakers, those reports gathered dust. For survivors and families, there was no closure, only the painful knowledge that history was already repeating elsewhere. Cartel leaders adapted quickly. They used the riot as propaganda. Songs were written, ballads glorifying the fallen, turning killers into legends. New recruits entered prisons with pride, seeing them not as punishment, but as extensions of cartel territory. These prisons were not correctional facilities anymore, they were fortified training grounds, places where power was tested and battles planned. And yet, the deepest legacy is human. Generations will carry the scars. Children grow up asking not if their fathers died, but how. Wives pass on stories laced with both love and horror. Every anniversary of the riot brings vigils, prayers, marches. But the state does not attend. It prefers silence, leaving memory to the families who refuse to forget. The riot's legacy is this: prisons remain symbols not of justice, but of failure. Walls meant to hold back crime instead incubated it. Chains meant to restrain violence only concentrated it. And in the ashes of that one night, 400 bodies lost in smoke and fire, the world saw clearly that these prisons do not break cartels. They feed them. The Deadliest Cartel prison riot was not just a night of violence. It was a turning point, a moment that revealed how fragile the line between order and chaos truly is. And its legacy still lives on, inside the walls, and far beyond them. We return now, to where it all began. The prison stands silent. Its walls, once meant to protect, are forever scarred. The courtyards are empty, the cells cleaned, the fires long extinguished. And yet, the silence feels heavy. As if the screams of that night never truly left. The corridors where men begged for mercy are still there. The floors scrubbed, but blood once seeped deep into the concrete. The iron doors rattled that night with fists of the desperate. Today, they creak quietly in the wind. Every shadow seems to carry a memory of violence. The official reports said it was a riot. A tragedy sparked by chaos. But listen closely, the survivors call it something else. They whisper that it was a war. Not random madness, but an orchestrated battle between cartels who saw the prison not as confinement, but as a battlefield. Because on that night, the prison was no longer under the control of the state. Guards fled, commanders hesitated, officials delayed. It was the cartels, not the government, who decided life and death. Behind those walls, authority shifted. The chains of power snapped. And for hours, the prison belonged to the cartels. And that is the chilling truth. What the world called the deadliest prison riot was in reality a demonstration. A message carved in fire and blood. That even within maximum security, the cartels reign supreme. For the families, the question has never been answered. Who let it happen? Who profited? Who walked away untouched while hundreds burned? Every anniversary brings new demands for truth, but the silence from those in power is louder than any confession. The survivors still carry nightmares. They wake to phantom screams, smell the smoke in their dreams, feel the heat of fires that should have killed them. Some live in hiding, afraid that speaking too much will make them the next target. Their stories contradict the official narrative, and that makes them dangerous. Governments downplay. Cartels glorify. Families mourn. But the prison itself keeps the truth. Its walls echo with the unanswered question, who truly controlled it that night? Who really controls it now? And perhaps, the most terrifying thought is this: the riot was not unique. It was not the first. And it will not be the last. As long as prisons remain breeding grounds for power, as long as corruption holds the keys, the cartels will always have the upper hand. So as the sun sets on those scorched walls, one truth lingers in the silence: this was not just a riot. It was a cartel war, fought behind bars, in a place meant for justice, but lost to blood. And the question remains, unanswered, chilling, inevitable. Who truly controlled that prison? If you've made it this far, you now know the story they tried to bury. But the truth doesn't end here. The cartels are still inside, the corruption still festers, and the next riot could already be building. If you want to uncover more stories they don't want you to hear, subscribe now. Share this with someone who needs to know the truth. And tell me in the comments, who do you think really controlled that prison? Because this is not the end. This is only the beginning.